And we welcome Matt George, Matty McQueen.
Yes, sir.
McQueen in the Violet Fog, the smoothest shit in the world, handcrafted in Brazil. Of course, no McQueen in the Violet Fog for Matt George today, as he's hard at work over at the ABC 10 studios. Of course, he's the host of the Locked On Kings podcast as well, cranking out the content. Matt, how are you, man?
I'm good, guys. How are you doing?
We good, man. We good.
Are you behaving yourself on social media?
You know, one advice I was going to give you, Kenny, is if you want to really get to Draymond, start talking about his Hulu commercials. Let's see if that pops off.
Yeah, Hulu commercials. I ain't seen them.
Well, see, that's the thing. You could tweet about Ja Morant having Hulu commercials and how males used to be Draymond, and then just set everything on fire.
Oh, yeah, that's a good call. It's a good call, Matty McQueen. I didn't set you up there. My bad, brother.
You, as has been the history with the Locked On. By the way, I got to pull this up. Have you guys are doing the Locked On Network's doing the Locked On Draft show just like you did last year.
Yeah, the ultimate mock draft. Yeah.
Have you seen the stuff involving the Sacramento Kings? So they sent it to me because, like last year, we've got to record the little clip. So the way I see this is, and you this is your network, so you'd be more familiar. Is that pick number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 have all happened? So the scenario that your people at the Locked On Podcast Network have asked us to comment on is pick number 6 gets traded to Sacramento. It's the Indiana Pacers. Here's the trade scenario, Matt. It's the Kings get, in this case, Keegan Murray, Malcolm Brogdon, and the 2023 Pacers top 5 protected pick. The Pacers get whoever the Kings selected it for, Rashawn Holmes and Justin Holiday.
That's what we call a leak. That's what we call my negotiations getting out before showtime. But yeah, I can't confirm.
Was I not supposed to read that on the air the last 2 days?
What did I do wrong?
Was I supposed to? Wait.
Now, what did I do wrong? What did I see wrong?
Was I supposed to respond to that privately? That's my bad. The email came through, and I thought, damn, this is great show content. Whoops. You know what, Matt? Don't answer this question. Let's go back. Let's talk about something else.
The Kings organization's got leaks again. Oh, no.
We're changing topics here, and we're going to discuss something else. Matt, tell us more about De'Aaron Fox. Let's talk about something less uncomfortable. You have thrown out a variety of different scenarios. Apparently, another one coming up here in a couple of days on the Locked On Network. You've thrown out a variety of scenarios for the Sacramento Kings. What's your favorite draft? Like, what's the ideal scenario for you as it pertains to the Sacramento Kings in the 4th pick?
Ooh, right now it's bouncing back and forth between the Kings trading up to 2 to get Chet Holmgren and a hypothetical trade that I don't know if anybody's thought of the Kings moving back to take Keegan Murray and also getting an asset. I definitely don't think anybody's negotiated or talking about that at any point in time. But maybe the ultimate mock draft might have it. I hope you tune in when it airs. But I mean, I'm still super high on the Keegan Murray. I've the last 2 days, your guys' conversation on Keegan Murray, love that. I actually did my episode of Locked On Kings today, though. Might confuse some people because the title is The Sacramento Kings Aren't Good Enough to Pass on Jaden Ivey. And a lot of people might be confused by that. It's like, have you switched gears so heavily on the Keegan Murray, Jaden Ivey debate? No, I just had a guest on one of our Locked On NBA big board hosts and a guy from Draft Dummies. His name's Sam. He's really good. He and I were discussing Keegan versus Jaden. He made a super strong argument for Jaden Ivey. So it goes back and forth with me. I'm still personally super high on Keegan Murray at 4. I would be totally okay with the Kings leaving draft night with either Keegan Murray or Jaden Ivey at 4. But I think the Kings moving up to 2 to get Chet, I think that could be some fireworks as well.
So there's a lot going on there. Let's start with Jaden Ivey. Do you subscribe to the theory that a lot of other people do. I haven't gotten there yet. Like I said, I need some glasses, so I need LASIK or something like that because I'm not seeing it clearly with Jaden Ivey the way some other people do. But they talk about Russell Westbrook comparisons, D Wade comparisons. Are you seeing that type of potential for Jaden Ivey?
See, I think people are infatuated with athleticism, and I get you don't have to teach athleticism. So when a young man comes into the NBA and has those skills already, and you think you can add fundamentals, add NBA skill sets on top of that, like that's enticing and that's exciting. But I think we fall too in love sometimes with athleticism, with that flash, with that flair. And look, Jaden Ivey looks like a lot of fun. I'm drooling at the idea of him and Fox in a fast break together. I've seen the dunks. I've seen the highlights. I understand the flash and the flair there. But the Sacramento Kings have drafted good athletes in the past. The big name that comes to mind, or the first name that comes to mind for me is like Ben McLemore, who I remember I was in Arco Arena for Ben McLemore's rookie debut, the Kings home opener. And his first ever shot attempt as a Sacramento King, he tried like an Air Jordan dunk from the free throw line. He missed the dunk because he was fouled. So we've seen that athleticism before, but we know with McLemore, there were questions about fundamentals, basketball IQ, things like that. Also, the Sacramento Kings did in my opinion, terrible job of developing him, which is another element of this conversation. So I see the flash and flair of Jaden Ivey. I see the potential that he can have to be a really, really good player. I don't think the gap of his ceiling between or his to Keegan Murray's, I don't think the gap is that significant. And I think people are almost bored by the idea that Keegan Murray doesn't necessarily have that flash and flair, but he comes into the NBA with a really solid fundamental skill set and a high basketball IQ and makes a lot of sense for the Sacramento Kings. I think that's diminished a little bit when you're looking at athletes versus up here.
Do you have like we talk about tiers all of the time in the league and both in the draft as well. Is Jaden Ivey in a tier by himself in this draft class? Or is he in the same tier as Keegan Murray? Are they in different tiers?
I'd put Jaden Ivey and Keegan Murray in the same tier, but I know I'm pretty much on an island in that. I put both of them underneath that top three tier. And I want to preface that by saying, like, as much as I'm high on Keegan Murray, if any one of the top three falls to the Kings at 4, I'm taking one of those top 3 over Keegan Murray. I might think about it a little bit, might use all of my 5 minutes, but in that case, it's like, that's where I agree with the takes of Kings don't try and get too cute. I am high on Keegan Murray in the belief that those top 3 guys are going to be gone, and he versus Ivey versus, I guess, Shaedon Sharpe, that's the conversation. Keegan Murray is ahead of both of those guys for me. But yeah, I would put Ivey and Murray, I guess, in the same tier. And like I said earlier, if the Kings leave draft night and Jaden Ivey is the pick, I have questions about fit, just like I would have questions about anything else with every prospect in this draft. I'm not disappointed, not angry by any means, because I think Jaden Ivey is going to be a really fun and good player.
What excites you the most about Keegan Murray? Like, what do you look at with him and say, I would love to see him in Sacramento doing these type of things?
Well, a big thing for me is day one impact. And this is why, and I like the fit versus best player available, which I put an asterisk next to best player available. I really want to change that to highest ceiling, because to me, Keegan Murray is the best player available between he and Jaden Ivey, in my opinion, because I think best player right now, Murray is going to have the best impact for the Sacramento Kings day one, in my opinion. But highest ceiling, Jaden Ivey has more, I guess, star potential than Keegan Murray does, or at least a lot of people feel that way. But to answer your question, Casey, like, I think fit is extremely important this year, because even if there wasn't this reported playoff mandate this year, when Monte McNair acquired Domantas Sabonis, essentially he acquired a 2-year playoff mandate. Like, he has to make the playoffs, or he has to start winning games these next 2 years, or Sabonis is gone and the Kings are in a world of hurt. Right. So I look at Keegan Murray as someone who checks that fit box, who can come in day one, probably as a night one starter. And even if he still is learning how to excel in the NBA and how to be an NBA player, he still fits well enough in the Kings system that I think he can be an impact as a catch and shoot 3-point shooter. He can be an impactful player on the defensive end of the floor. And then, I mean, I know Bryant was talking a lot about like his ability to create his own jump shot, shoot off the dribble, like that stuff. I don't mind him taking time to develop because I know the skill sets that he's bringing in, or at least I believe the skill sets that he's bringing in can translate and help the Sacramento Kings from day one. I also think Jaden Ivey can do some things that help the Kings from day one, but not as much as Keegan Murray in my mind.
You're listening to Dealing with KC on KIFM West Sacramento, KRXQ, HD2 Sacramento, and Odyssey Station, and driven by Lashers, Elk Grove Dodge, Matt George of ABC 10, and the host of the Locked On Kings podcast with us here. You recently, you mentioned Chet Holmgren a few minutes ago, and one of your ideal scenarios would be trading up for him. You did a podcast on that recently. Likely a little bit, likely a lot. Keep dreaming, buddy. Which one would you rank him under?
Maybe like likely a little bit, and that feels like super optimistic. Like I think the Kings have a legitimate shot. I think the Kings do have a legitimate shot, and I don't think Monte McNair is afraid of trading the assets necessary to make that move. But I did a solo podcast a couple days ago where I talked about I'm not worried about Monte McNair making a reckless move in order to save his job. I'm not. I trust Monte McNair. I believe Monte's going to trade assets. If he does trade assets, he's going to make his draft selection. He's going to make every move this offseason with the expectation that he's going to be feeling the repercussions 4, 5, 6 years down the road. That's how he should operate, even if the contract isn't there. And I have faith that he's going to do that. So do I think McNair would sell the Kings' future, multiple first-round picks to the Presti pick treasure trove in order to move up a couple of spots to get Chet? I don't think he'd do that unless he really believed that Chet was going to be the guy that would make the difference. And even then, I don't think he'd go so overboard as to attach multiple first-rounders to that deal, or like a guy like Davion Mitchell to that deal when he doesn't have to. So I think the Kings have a legit shot at making it possible, especially if OKC is as interested in Jaden Ivey as some reports suggest. Any trade on draft night, the Kings moving up, the Kings moving down, it's all going to rely. I mean, you need two to tango. It's all going to rely on what the other team wants. The Sacramento Kings, it's a 50-50 in that sense. If the Kings are going to trade back to 5 at Detroit or 6 at Indiana, it's because there's someone at 4 that those two teams really, really want. So you have to let everything play out on draft night before you get there. But I do think the Kings have a legitimate shot of moving up to 2. I wouldn't say it's highly likely, though. And
if they move up to 2, I think we both agree that it's for Chet Holmgren. But if they move up to 2, should it be for Chet Holmgren or should it be for Paolo Banchero? We always assume it's for Chet Holmgren, and that's what a deal is. But are we confident in saying that Chet is going to be a better player than Paolo Banchero?
I think I am, but also for me, it's in a lot of ways the best of both worlds, because I think Chet is an excellent fit and he's the best player available at that spot, and maybe the best player available in the entire draft. I love Jabari Smith Jr. too. I have no reason to believe he's going to be there past 1. But Chet, you're looking for rim protection, check. You're looking for floor spacing, check. You're looking for size in the front court. Now, I think it's fair there would be questions about, okay, are you going to play Sabonis as the 4? Is Sabonis naturally a 4? There's always going to be questions. There's always going to be concerns. But the two things that I believe Chet Holmgren does the best are two things you significantly need here in Sacramento. So I'm pretty confident in saying it would be Chet over Paulo, who there are defensive questions and not necessarily shooting questions, but to Chet over Paulo is pretty. I'm pretty confident in saying that, at least on my board.
I think will be better.
You mentioned you think Paolo will be better?
Yeah, I think he'll be better than Chet over the course of his career.
You've been pretty consistent in that thinking. Chet,
I think Paolo is the best in the draft. I think he's better than Jabari too.
Jabari's the one that I don't hear the glowing praise for Jabari in any of these conversations. I just hear no, Jabari's good. Like right out the gate. Yeah, Jabari's good. Like right now. He's good right now. And I feel like everyone's comfortable in that. I think there's also fit. Like we talked about the two teams at the top of the draft and their positions of need fit perfectly with Jabari and Chet. You mentioned on your podcast about Monte McNair, playoff mandates, and there's all these different lines out there pertaining to the Sacramento Kings. You can choose to believe all of them. You can choose to believe none of them. One that has been circulating recently is the win now player. We'll ask you what we've been trying to figure out for the better portion of a week is who the hell is the win now player?
That's a great question. I don't know if there is a name. I know the name that you guys have been discussing in this room. Myself, my partner Kevin John, and Henry Turner, who was on with our post game last night. All three of us were talking about who you guys have been talking about, which is Zach LaVine. I mean, that is a established NBA talent. We know he's very, very good. We know the Kings also tried to acquire him not too long ago and force the Chicago Bulls to match. And now he's at the end of that contract. So I certainly would consider. I go back and forth on that, and I think that would be a great debate with the concerns of him defensively, the concerns with his injuries. But I think if you got a healthy Zach LaVine who played 60-plus games for you next to a De'Aaron Fox, next to a Domantas Sabonis, a Davion Mitchell, and the only thing you really had to give up is whoever you take it for in salary filler, I think the Sacramento Kings are a really good basketball team, or they've gotten significantly better. But is it so much better than having or getting a fourth pick that has the potential to turn into a star that you have contractual control over for the next 8-9 years? That's the risk you take. And Monty's already taken that risk in trading away Tyrese Halliburton. So I don't know who that win now player is. I appreciate that it's a scenario. And that's one of the things I was talking about a lot with the Kings. If they stayed at 7, was trading that 7th pick, moving out of the draft completely and finding an established NBA talent. If the Kings want to win right now, and if they do truly have a playoff mandate, which, by the way, a lot of people read playoff mandate and they attach a negative connotation to it, and they've brought that to, hey, this is Vivek saying that they have to win right now, and he's going to force Monty McNair to make a bad move. As critical as I've been of Vivek Ranadive, one, I have no issue with a playoff mandate if that's really the case, and two is I have zero indication to believe and zero belief myself that Vivek Ranadive is putting so much pressure on Monty McNair in this front office that they're going to make a foolish move. I actually truly do not believe that. I feel pretty confident in saying that. So if McNair is going to go out and trade this pick for a win now player, whoever that player is, he has to be very, very confident that the money that they're paying that player is worth it. And we know money and cap flexibility is really important to McNair, number one. And number two, he has to believe that that player is going to be so impactful in however many years that he's here that this fourth pick won't matter whoever it ends up being 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years down the road.
Yeah. I mean, and we talked about this the other day. We have to, and Jesse and Damian were putting it in a situation that, you know, you got to ask yourself, if you trade for somebody like Zach LaVine, is whoever I'm taking at 4, will they ever be as good as Zach LaVine? And if the answer is I don't think so, or no, in your opinion, then you make the move. If there's any doubt that you think Jaden Ivey could, I mean, Zach LaVine's a one-time All-Star, and, you know, somebody who was really productive in his time even before an All-Star. Do you think Jaden Ivey will be a 3-time All-Star possibly and just as productive? Then you hold back and you hold on to that number 4 pick. But I mean, that's just the kind of way that I would try to look at that situation. Is whoever we take it for, do we project them at being a better player over the course of their career than Zach LaVine?
Yep, and that's where McNair's longevity comes into play too, right, Casey? That's where I believe, even if he does not have that contract extension secured, and by the way, there's still so much time for them to secure that contract. So, I mean, we're talking months here. It doesn't have to be done as quickly as they brought Mike Brown in. I would like them to start the season with him under contract, but I'm not going to panic if they're not. It would just be kind of another unusual Kings move that we've seen in the past. But it doesn't necessarily mean doom and gloom. But McNair, if McNair's making that move, whatever move McNair is making, he's expecting to be around to see it through. And that's the way he really should operate. And if he doesn't feel comfortable enough to operate that way, then it's already, in my opinion, then things are already over, you know? So, and I got no indication from people I've talked to and no indication from what I've seen and heard out of Monty McNair that there's any reason to feel otherwise. So I think in terms of a front office structure, the Kings are in pretty good place, a pretty good place. And as much as we can debate who the Kings should take it for, who the Kings should trade for it for, it's a fun conversation. We all have our opinions. We don't have to be right. Monty does. And I stand by what I said multiple times. I think if the Kings screw up this number 4 pick, if they screw up this pick, as important as the Domantas Sabonis Tyrese Halliburton trade was, that was the appetizer. This is the entree. If the Kings screw up the number 4 pick, I think this playoff drought will reach 20 years. I'm pretty confident in saying that.
Man, what happened to the optimistic kid who used to work down south?
Still got a jersey.
Hey, by the way, man, congrats on covering the finals. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's real dope.
It was tremendous. I will say, I know a lot of the conversation right now because of Clay's comments has been like fan bases and Boston fans sharing their charm and things like that. I don't have any side to pick on that. All I will say is a lot of the coverage that we did in NBA Finals Game 1, we were outside covering the reaction of the fans outside, everybody showing up. We did the post game out there, and even after the loss, the Warriors fans that I interacted with were extremely nice, extremely welcoming, talked a lot about Sacramento, were very hopeful for the Kings. And then there were plenty of Boston fans out there as well that I didn't see get treated disrespectfully, and they were very nice as well. So I had a great time out there. It was a tremendous career achievement for me. The Chase Center is nice. It's no Golden One Center, but it was an awesome experience.
So what just happened? Well, what are you doing right now?
What?
You're out here saving Warrior fans. You're the same Warrior fans that were throwing T-shirts at Charles Barkley and got the nerve to look. I'm not repping for Boston, but come on, man. You didn't draw the ire of the Golden State Warrior fans, so of course they were nice. It's about their interaction with someone who they feel is wrong. It was Draymond Green. It wasn't booing Steve Kerr.
Oh, no,
I wasn't booing Jordan Poole. It was Draymond and Draymond only.
I have zero issue with what the Boston Celtics fans did. Zero issue whatsoever. I think Draymond in many ways brought that on himself. I also think Draymond Green, I know I was listening to your entire conversation. I think Draymond Green is really good for basketball, and that's more the WWE brain. I think Draymond Green, the character, Draymond Green, the antagonist, I think he brings in conversation. I think he brings in interest. I think this conversation that him having a podcast is somehow detrimental to his team is absolutely ridiculous. Draymond Green annoys the absolute hell out of me too, but I think he's good for the game. I think he's good for ratings, good for drama. And I'm all for it. And I'm all for Boston voicing their opinion the way that they did. He deserves it in many ways.
Now, well, I don't know what other people have said, but I know Kendrick Perkins and Hall of Famer Isaiah Thomas, they talked about his podcast. And I don't think anybody has said he shouldn't have the podcast. What they said is you're putting more energy into that podcast than you are preparing yourself for the NBA Finals and what you're about to face. And I don't know if I agree with that because I don't know how much energy he's putting into it.
I don't agree with that.
But I mean,
there's too
much energy going into that podcast right now. They talk about LeBron James and they say, "Oh, LeBron James is all this other stuff."
Dark 23.
LeBron, you don't do nothing during the finals. Dark 23. You don't do nothing during the finals. That's all regular season and after the playoffs. Finals, playoffs, he's locked in. Now, I don't think it matters that much with Draymond Green because if he don't do the podcast, like I said, what's he gonna do? Put up 8 points instead of 2? It don't matter.
Maybe.
And you'll hear about every one of those 8 points. He'll tell you about it.
Good luck leaving me off the all 75 list if I had 8 points in that game.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. No.
Matt out here talking about how wonderful the board. Complimenting the man on covering the NBA Finals, and he's
say all of them.
Chase Center's wonderful. It's gorgeous. Did I hear you say it was better than the Golden One Center? I thought that's what. I think my Comrex glitched. I think that's what that was.
Look, I've already had a rough week. I'm already low on a lot of Kings fans lists right now. Don't you throw me all the way into the bed.
You're low on our list,
buddy. You hey, don't worry about that other stuff, man. It's not that big of a deal. Don't be silly. It's no big deal. Could be worse. You could wear a player's jersey into the locker room and be thrown out of it. So like that stuff has happened as well. So that's Matt George. We thank the world of him. He's doing a great job over there at ABC 10. And the Locked On Kings podcast is really just a tremendous source for Kings news. So make sure you subscribe to that.